Hello, welcome to One Moment Wiser. This is Christy Bridges, and I have a really exciting person with me today. She is going to be at the Enjoy Christian Mental Health Conference. Not only is she going to be there, but her team is going to begin our weekend with a lovely time doing what we call StoryRopes. So Holly, this is Holly Beitel. And Holly, I'm so grateful that you are with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. And I said you're going to be there. I can't remember if it's actually going to be you, but I know it's your team.
Yes.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So tell us what StoryRopes is. What can we expect?
Yeah, so StoryRope is actually, it's a whole process, but we use a really creative tool and we call it a StoryRope. And basically, it's a process where we help people build their story creatively with fabrics, ribbons, other kind of doodads. And they actually can create a timeline of their story. And basically, we use the reason it's called a rope, like a 3-foot long, thin piece of fabric. And then you add ribbons and all kinds of other things to it. And they might represent things that have happened to you or people or different things in your story. And when you get done, you have this really creative portrait of your story. And the interesting thing about it, Christy, is that we are all used to telling our story and writing it typically from the left brain side, because that's how we talk. That's when you write. It's kind of the analytical side. But doing this creative process, there's something about engaging both the left and the right side of the brain that kind of allows you to experience your story, sometimes in a way that you never have. And so our whole goal with the whole process is to really consider maybe seeing your story from the Lord's perspective instead of the way that we have always told it, seen it ourselves. Because as you're aware, as things happen to us throughout our childhood, throughout our lives, we create these filters. And they developed based on maybe wounds we've had or lies we start believing. And as we go through life, we put everything that's happening to us through these filters. And though they're reality to us, sometimes they're not actually the full picture. And so sitting with the Lord and asking him, you know what, Lord, when that situation happened when I was 8 years old, what was your perspective? Where were you? What do you want me to know about that? And going through that process can be just a really liberating experience. And we've found that we have done these retreats. We have a whole process, and we've done them across the United States and in 7 foreign countries and in different languages.
Nice.
And every time women and men as well, but experience just a really freeing, enlightening time that's just really exciting to see.
How cool. Now, if you are starting to panic, thinking, I don't want to go back through my whole history, remember, it's one evening, right? So we're not going to go through your whole history.
Yes. And because we cannot go through that whole process, right. We will be Friday evening, where what's on the agenda for Friday evening. And actually what we're going to do at this conference is we're going to take one story.
Yeah.
Just one story, and we're going to kind of take you through a mini version with how we process through that story, how we even sit and ask, okay, Lord, is there a lie I started believing because of this story? Is there a wound that might need to be healed? And just begin to unpack it and let the Lord start to show us his perspective with it. And yeah, it'll be a very compact mini version, should be pretty easy to digest.
And you should go through the whole weekend. At some point, everybody who's watching needs to go through a StoryRopes weekend because it's neat. But I will say, I've met a lot of people who are nervous about going back. They're like, well, Jesus set me free now. And they don't always recognize how things from our past can rise up and affect our reactions now and our relationships now and even our attitudes without us recognizing them. So it makes sense to reopen, just unpack something from our past and go, Lord, what's your perspective on this? Because so often those things that really had a big impact on us happen at a certain age of immaturity, right? I didn't know the things when I was 5 that I know now. I didn't have the same self-respect and self-understanding when I was 10 that I do now. I didn't understand other people and that things weren't always about me when I was 16 like I do now. So when we can go back with God and say, Lord, where were you? And then get his input to create that story, not only is it healing for us, but it's powerful for other people that we share it with.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because, and that's one of the first things we hear is, I don't want to look back at the past. The past is past. But if you're still wounded and if you're still believing a lie from that time, you actually haven't moved on. And so through the process, where we end up is actually with the Lord asking, where is the purpose you want to bring from this pain? And so at the end of the process, we actually see people sometimes for the first time realizing how much purpose there is in their story.
That feels good. That feels good. And there is power. There is power. I can behave differently now that I understand that I wasn't necessarily being rejected. Mom was going through a hard time. I wasn't not being protected. Dad was just young and, like we all are. Right. So, there's power there. I'm so glad you're doing that. So, tell us a little bit about, what got you started in this? What inspired this?
So True Stories Ministries we've been doing this for over 10 years. We started in 2013 and we met an artist and her name's Marge Malwitz up in Connecticut. And she actually had used this tool. We didn't create the tool ourselves. She actually had used this tool in Rwanda working with genocide survivors. And she had with a complete language, cultural barrier, so much freedom came from that we met her and she allowed us to use the tool. And then we built out a whole retreat experience around it. And I personally, like the first time I did it, I thought, okay, this is a craft. Like, I don't love crafts, but I'll do it. So I did the craft and I told my story and I came home and I just threw the story rope in my closet.
Yeah.
And I would eventually was walking to my closet and I'd keep seeing this thing and something would rise up in me. And I had such an aversion to it.
Ooh.
And so finally, one day, I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I grabbed it. I grabbed my Bible. I went outside on our deck and I opened my Bible and I threw my story rope on it. And I said, okay, Lord, what do you want me to know? And I looked down and I saw 2 words. And it was the shortest verse in the Bible. And it said, Jesus wept. And at that moment, I knew exactly what the Lord wanted me to know about my story because I lost my mom when I was 8 years old. I never grieved. And because of that, grief became complicated grief and had affected me my entire life. And I didn't want to go through this whole process because I was thinking, you know what? The Lord's going to want me to do something really hard. It's just going to be all the bad stuff in my life. It's just going to get dredged up. And I just don't want to do it. And I saw those 2 words and I realized, wow, he didn't want any of that. He just wanted me to know when that happened to that 8-year-old little girl who didn't grieve, who didn't know how to process this thing that had happened to her. He just wanted me to know, you didn't cry. You went to school today. You didn't even go to her funeral because, a lot of times children didn't at that time. But I wept. And when that happened to me, I was like, okay, this is not a craft. It was a super powerful experience for me. And then we just kind of developed a whole process where we looked at truth and lies. We looked at grace in our story. Like, where are the places of grace that maybe we didn't know they were there? Where are the places of forgiveness? And then, like I said, looking forward, where is the platform for purpose that you want to bring from all of this pain?
Yes. Okay, you just broke my heart here.
Sorry.
But I love that, because there is, like you said, we tend to tell stories from our left brain, right? And the more we've told it. Now, part of healing or just recovering from the shock is telling the story until it kind of becomes a script, right? And so we get to where we're just the facts, right? Just that left brain recitation. But there's something about, I grew up, my mom's still around. She just celebrated her 70th birthday. But I was always going to fabric stores with her. And I could just get lost in the fabric, because it would just, you see like the woodsy fabrics and you're off, in the woods somewhere, or you see like the starry fabrics and you're like, there's just something in my heart that was so drawn into the stories that the fabrics told without any words. And there's like your experience of actually seeing that in the closet. It was a reminder, but it was a reminder that didn't have words. You couldn't rely on the script. It had feeling and ignited that other part of your brain that allowed you to take another look. Oh, I'm so glad you did. And God is so good to us. He speaks to us in ways we get. The same Bible that's been read by, 50 bazillion people, right? God was able to speak to you in 2 words of that and say, hey, I'm here.
And which is, the word, it's just his love story to us.
Yeah.
The whole word is just a story and his narrative of his love story for us. And so it's so important to us that we combine the story of the living, active word of God with the story we've experienced through our daily experiences.
Yes. And some people, when we talk about mental health with Christians, some people think that we should be able to just have the word of God, just have, the salvation experience. And they don't always recognize that the word of God is a guide for us. It is transformative as we continue reading it and going to the Lord in prayer, but we have to, it's full of practical things, right? It's full of practical, applicable things we have to apply. And God has given us even more knowledge, over the centuries, right? He's made humans communicative, right? We communicate what we learn and we continuously grow. And so there are times where we have to step back and reassess things and apply our new learning. And so I'm so grateful that you're starting our conference weekend with a moment where we can enjoy a fantastic dinner, but look back and kind of recognize things in ourselves, so that throughout the weekend, each new lesson becomes a tool we can use. Each new thing becomes applicable to our own lives. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the results.
Yeah, we are too.
Now, I don't want to wait that long. October 31st seems a long way away. What can we use today, Holly?
Sure. So one of our favorite tools, probably my favorite tool, and the favorite part of the whole process, the most impactful, is identifying the lies that we believe and asking the Lord, what is the truth? When it comes from him, it changes everything. Yeah. And so we actually got this tool from a counselor in Tulsa. Her name's Dr. Rosaline Koblentz. Yeah. We've worked with her with some of our retreat materials, and she taught us this tool, but it's called the reaction meter. And you can use this. You can use this when you get off this live and you go have that interaction with whoever you're in your home with, and something happens. And maybe it's a situation where whenever this particular thing happens, you react at an 8. When everyone else, for instance, when it happens to them, they're like at a 3, no big deal. And if you find that happening over and over, we call that the reaction meter. And it's just a chance to pause and say, okay, Lord, what's going on here? I'm at an 8, and my husband or my child or my coworker, like when this happens with them, they're like at a 3, like it's not even a thing to them.
Mhm.
And it's a chance to say, okay, what's going on? Is there a lie I'm believing about myself, about other people, or even about you that I'm not aware of? Or is there a wound here that just keeps, the scab just keeps getting torn off?
Yeah.
And that you want to sit with me about and really heal that wound. And since I told the story about my mom, I can tell you one I've just had in the last couple of weeks. It's a pretty easy one, and you'll be able to follow it easily. But I have a dear friend just got diagnosed with thyroid cancer. It's highly treatable. The prognosis is great, but we have this group of women, and we surround her, and that deserves a reaction from all of us, right? At maybe a 6 or a 7 through the whole process. But the whole time, I'm at a 9 or a 10 about everything, about the diagnosis, about waiting for the diagnosis. Last week, when we sat in the waiting room while she's having surgery, and then now waiting for the pathology and getting those. I'm like off the charts as far as my reaction to all of that. And having heard that tiny bit of my story, you might go, well, yeah, you spent your childhood in hospitals and being afraid and not knowing, with the whole cancer journey. And that happened at 8 years old. And still, I get triggered when I'm over 50 now
Yeah.
over something like that. And that's just given me pause the last 2 weeks to go, okay. I mean, granted, I should be concerned for my friend. Like I should be having, a 6 or a 7 reaction. But what is welling up within me is so much higher than that. And it's just been a good time to say again, okay, Lord, obviously there's another layer of the onion here that you might want to pull back. Maybe there's more healing. Maybe I'm still believing some lies about all of that, who knows? But now that I have that tool, I can go, okay, this has gone on for, weeks now, and I'm still like PTSD kind of reacting to this whole situation. I need to sit with the Lord about that. And so it's just a really practical tool you can use throughout your day. You can use it really fast, but it may start a process that may extend longer, but it can be such a sweet time with the Lord to just realize, oh my gosh, like when this happens, it's rejection, but it's related to when I was rejected at whatever age. And what the Lord wants me to know is the truth of his word is whatever he shows you.
Right. Well, you just opened a whole bunch of stuff here. So God helps us where we are, right? And when you first began dealing with it, you had the story rope. He helped you where you were, but you're not going to see the way that you're triggered when you're not in a situation that triggers it, right? Mm-hmm. And so we go through a situation where now your best friend is going through this thing that you can't control, and all the stuff rises up. God is there to help you again, and being self-aware about it, having already gone through some recovery time with him, makes you more willing to trust him and lean into him and work with him.
100%.
The more we allow ourselves to feel our feelings and talk to God about them, the easier it is to have that conversation the next time. The easier it is to let him do his work the next time. And there will be a next time. In this world, you will have trouble, Jesus said, right?
And the other super neat thing is it helps you in community, yes. Right? So I have this group of women around me that know my story, mm-hmm. and they know all my stuff. And so I'm going through this reaction. They're like, okay, Holly, like, are you believing a lie here? Like, are you stirred up about something? Like, you can do this actually with each other in community once you know each other's stories. right? And you can actually help people along in their story and help them know when they're reacting at this 7, 8, or 9. You can go, whoa, like every time this happens, like you're kind of up here. And I just wonder, maybe you could consider with the Lord, is there a lie you're believing? Is there a wound that's getting stirred up? And it's a really sweet way to journey with each other in community.
Okay, I love the way you phrase that too. Because sometimes when people are like, why are you so upset about this? Just chill, right? Then
Right.
you're like, you care, you should care more. And then we're like escalated because they don't care enough and now we have to care for them, right?
Right.
We have to do their
Right.
job too. And you had friends instead who were like, this makes me wonder. I'm just curious. Maybe you should consider this. It's very respectful. And it reminds me of the story of Naaman when, he is like off the handle because he didn't feel respected by, was it Elijah or Elisha? And his guys were like, hey, maybe it's not as hard as you think it is.
Yeah, right.
Try it, and
And it's okay because they know my story. Like they know
uh-huh.
they can be so tender and they have a level of understanding. Whereas, like, I feel like some shame or some guilt or you should be over this. You should be able to deal with things like this better. But they have this level of compassion because they know my story and they've walked through it with me.
Yeah. And those shoulds don't do us any good, right?
No, but we
I
should.
believe that God's going to make it better, so I am suddenly magically better. Well, no, I still feel this stuff, and I need to deal with the stuff that I feel. And you still trust God in the process. I'm sure, Holly, that you've been through this journey with God for 50 years.
Yes.
But you can still have feelings and trust God. Both can be true, right? Yay. So we've gotten more than one practical tip. Number one is be willing, right, to look back at the times when things happen and ask God to give you his perspective. Two is have really good friends into your life, right? And three, take a look at where you are on that escalation meter because it can help you address things instead of just flying off the handle. Well, bless you. So people can find you if they want a whole Story Ropes weekend. Where can they find you?
Sure. Our website is truestoriesministries.com. So stories and ministries are both plural.
Okay.
They can reach us through there. We have a full retreat experience. We also now also have a Bible study, a 12-week Bible study that can be done in small groups that kind of takes the retreat experience and breaks it up like into a weekly Bible study. So
Awesome.
that happened over COVID because there were no retreats to have. And so we really dove in and asked the Lord, how can we make this a tool that can be accessible to small groups that might not have access to a retreat?
So churches or other people, if you're planning small groups for the fall or for the spring, check out truestoriesministries.com and get their 12-week study. Mm-hmm. Also, encourage your people to come to gorgeous Bartlesville the weekend of Halloween, October 31st and November 1st. We are hosting the Enjoy Christian Mental Health Conference so that the family of God can be equipped with great coping skills, good relationship skills. And if you're a therapist, you can also get some continuing education credits.
Awesome.
God bless you. Thanks so much, Holly.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.